Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we have an exciting video jam-packed with helpful tips and tricks for your spring break. It is spring in full swing here in Texas. Everything is starting to bloom and everyone's spring breaks are coming up and everyone loves to get away for spring break. So today I'm going to share with you how I plan for trips and some helpful things that will help you in your spring break planning or just trip planning in general. So the first obvious thing to do is to figure out where you want to go or where you have plans to go. Once you have your destination in mind, then you can figure out your dates of travel. And this may be something that you want to keep flexible, so you might be able to find better flight deals, but oftentimes we're traveling because we have a break or because we have to go for an event, which can make our dates a little bit more rigid, which is totally fine. But either way, dates and flights tend to go together. And with traveling in general, whether you're flying or driving or using other transportation, you have to be aware of the time traveling takes and how you're going to get from point A to point B and how long everything is. So those two just end up going hand in hand. Once you have your flights/dates set, then it's time to book accommodations if you need them. That is hotels, Airbnbs. We use Airbnb all the time, and sometimes it's really nice to have a full kitchen. We've stayed in some really cool places that are just really cute and homey. It's a little bit different than a hotel. Sometimes it's cheaper, it just depends. So I would definitely look at all the options. So Airbnb, Vrbo, hotels, whatever, to find what the best deal is going to be for you. And after you find your accommodations, the other thing you need to consider is if you need a rental car. And my favorite way to book a rental car is through Costco Travel. And I'm going to show you on a screen share right now how I go about doing that, because I think there's some features about it that are really great. So one of the features I love is that you can have multiple bookings at once. So I like to book my initial rental car and then I'll come back a couple days later to see if the prices have changed. And oftentimes I'm able to get a car at a better price a couple days later, and then I just cancel the original booking and there's no penalty to it. So we were going up to New York for a wedding. So I put in the airport that we were going to, you put in the pickup day and the time, and then you also do the drop-off day and time. So this is something that you can manage later and change, but this gives a good idea of when you think you're going to be getting your car, which is important if you've already booked your flights, because you should already have a pretty good idea. So then it'll take you through a couple different rental car places, and so they kind of compare the price for you, and you can also get different levels of cars. So I think Costco Travel makes it really, really easy to rent cars, and then you literally just go to the car rental place after your flight and pick up the car at the airport. So we've used it many times and it's been awesome. That is what I would definitely recommend for renting a car. After all of those big pieces are already in place, kind of some of those bigger ticket items, then I like to look at what kinds of activities are we going to want to do. What do we want to see while we're there? What kinds of food do we want to eat? So for this trip that I am planning on here, we were in New York for a wedding, but then we decided to drive up to Toronto because it was really close to where the wedding was. And my husband lived in Toronto for a little while, so we thought it would be fun to go check it out and for him to show me around a little bit. I also am a huge fan of the British royal family, and so I could not pass up the opportunity to see some Meghan Markle things. So the first thing I looked up was her house that she lived in when she lived there, and I was able to find the address online. So I'm showing you on here. I just was kind of researching. So I wanted to go stop by the house if we could, because it was her house when she met Harry, which I think is just, it's iconic. It is. And it kind of sucks that she was trapped from all the paparazzi. But then I also went to her website, the TIG, which she shut down a while ago, but she had a travel guide that somebody had saved from her website about Toronto. So she gave all these things about where to eat and different places to stay and shopping places. And so I just kind of felt like being able to read her insights and kind of see Toronto through her eyes was really fun to get ideas of places we could go check out. So after I've kind of gathered some ideas, I'm gonna head over to our beloved Notion, because of course Notion has to be a part of this video because it is how I function in life. And so I have a travel section on my Notion page, and I don't know if I showed it on my Notion tour, but I have updated it since then. So on here I have all of the different travel trips that we go on, and I'm going to show you how I will go ahead and just kind of build a Notion page for this particular trip. So once we're on here, I'm going to head to our Toronto trip. I'm going to adjust the settings because you guys know how I feel about the settings. They must be a certain way. And I just kind of think about some big ideas, some like big things that I know I'm going to want to plan for the trip. So, you know I'm going to want to figure out some food places to eat. We're going to need an itinerary. I'm going to want to have ideas of where we can go sightseeing. And I'm also going to add logistics on here because I think it's really nice to have all of the information about where your airport is and what time your flight is and the accommodations for this day. I think it's just easy to have all of that in a really condensed location. So then once I have that built, then I'm going to add all of my ideas and things to it. So as you can see here, I just listed all these different things that she had recommended and things that I had looked up myself of things I wanted to see and wanted to eat. And then I'm also going to fill in an itinerary, and I'm going to add all the logistics that I can think of that I would need, and I'm going to make it look nice. So I'm going to just spare you some of the boring details of actually building it, and I'll just show you the final product. I thought it would be fun to add the Toronto skyline. I add my typical headers into things, and then I've kind of just broken down the ideas of places I want to go. I've got our itinerary. We were going to be driving quite a bit, so I had some of our driving things. I thought it would be helpful to kind of put, okay, this is where we want to go for breakfast. These are the hours. This is what I want to order there. This is our flight information. So I just kind of put down anything I felt would be pertinent and relevant to our trip that I would want to come back to reference at a quick glance. And honestly, I would totally take screenshots of this and then just keep it on my phone so I knew what to look for along the way. So that's kind of how I designed my travel dashboard for this trip. It's just everything that I needed at a quick glance, and I thought it was really helpful. Another helpful feature about Notion is that you can link things. So for example, on here, this restaurant is called Emmer, and I just linked the website where they had the menu so I could see the menu just by clicking on it really easily, so I wouldn't have to like look it up. Just to save some hassle and make it easier, I included that as well. So after I kind of have some big picture bones in place, then what I like to do is I like to go to Google Maps, and I do this more for trips where I'm going to be driving. I wouldn't really do it if you're just like kind of like, we went to San Diego and we just drove around San Diego, but we didn't really drive anywhere super far away. So this wasn't really necessary, but I did go to England. Well, I lived in England, but before I lived in England, I went to England and we did a whole huge old tour throughout the entire UK, and we drove for a lot of it. And it was really helpful to map out where we were going to go and how long it was going to take to get in between places. So I'm going to show you how I like to map things for Google Maps if you're doing kind of a long road tripping sort of trip. So as you can see, I have gone ahead and bookmarked the airport we're flying into. And now I'm going to look up one of the places that we had looked at going. And so you just type in the place you want to go to. And then once you find it on the map, it's really easy because you just click on it and then you can save it, and you can save it as a specific thing. You can save it however you want. You can add your own, but then it's saved on the map forever. And then from there, when you zoom out, you can see all the places on your map. And then from there, you can do directions. So from the airport to basically Toronto, I can check to see the distance between them. And then I can add destinations and I can add in the places that I'd already bookmarked without having to like look them up over and over again. So that's a simple way to kind of map out a driving trip that I just find to be really helpful. Instead of doing it on just my phone, it's having a cohesive map of where you're going, and you can really see it all connect together. The other thing I want to show on Notion is I am a big believer in a good packing list. I feel like it's essential because you will forget something. You always forget something. And so I like having a packing list because it just helps me not forget anything. I showed this probably on my Notion tour, but I have a button on my Notion that auto generates a packing list that I have pre-designed. And so for this trip, there was a couple things that I needed to add that is not on my normal packing list. So like, you know, we're going to be crossing a border of the country. And so I needed to add our passports to our list, which we normally wouldn't do if we were just staying in the United States. And then I needed a couple other things specifically for the wedding. And so I just like to have this list prepped, and then I can add to it or take things away from it as I need to. And then I go back and I just take it and drag it into the specific trip that we're going on, so I can have a customized packing list already made, and I don't have to like sit down and write it every single time I go somewhere. So the last big thing that I think is so helpful when planning for a trip is this app that I found. I knew I needed something on my phone to track some things while we were out and about, while you're actually on the trip, not just planning it ahead of time. I feel like Notion is great for planning things ahead of time, but I found this app and it's pretty awesome. So I'm going to walk you through all the different features of this app. It's called Wanderlog, and it's really, really helpful in tracking things on your trip. And so I'm going to show you some of my favorite features on it. I would also like to preface, I will be looking down because I am watching the screen recording that I took of it, so that way I can tell you things as it goes along with our screen right here. So just be aware of that. So first of all, I go into the app and it will load and it'll take you to a home page. And on this home page, there's a couple different buttons, but we're going to start off by planning a trip. So then you can go ahead, enter your destination in. And so we're going to Toronto, and then you can put your dates in. You can add friends to it. So that would be really fun if you're doing like a spring break trip with your friends and you want to kind of add everybody into the itinerary, or if you're doing a family trip somewhere and you wanted to give the head of every house access, you could. So then you get onto the trip dashboard itself, and there's a lot of features on here, so we're going to walk through one by one what everything is. So first of all, they have a list of like places to visit, and you can add places to it. If you hear something while you're out and about and you're like, oh, we should go there, add it to your list really quickly because it'll be easier to find later when you want to add it to your itinerary. You can also add notes, and so for example, this one bakery that we were looking at going was in this market that Meghan Markle had recommended as like a good shopping place. So I just wanted to notate that, so I knew that those were like next to each other. So you can put things like that. You can really put notes for anything you want. And so that's kind of another feature that I really enjoyed from the app, was having that note taking section. Then you can move on to the itinerary, and for each day of your trip, you can add a note about what that day is. This was going to be a big travel day for us, so I thought it would be really helpful to just kind of notate that so I could keep that in mind as we were traveling. Obviously, we needed to know which airport we were going to, and so I put that in there so we'd have the address really handy in case we needed it. Then on Sunday of our trip, I put one of the restaurants that we had looked at going and just added it in there so we could, know where its place on our day was going to be. So then you can click on the locations. It'll tell you information like their hours, their address, phone number. It'll give you their website. And then you can add an expense or add a cost. So if you're getting food, you can be like, okay, we spent $45 on food. Or if you're shopping, you can put the total there. And that's going to take you to the budget section of the app, which this is one of my favorite selling points of this app, was being able to track how much you're spending on your trip. So you can set a budget for your trip. So you can say, okay, we're going to spend $1,000 while we're here. And then it tracks, you input how much you spend at places, but then you can see how much you're spending on what you're spending. You can do a day-by-day spending breakdown. It's just really, really helpful because I feel like it can be really easy to go crazy on trips. So having accountability is key. So then on the Explore tab, there's lots of different categories that you can look at. So this one is cafes, I think. I just looked through here and I saw, oh, okay, you know, these are some different cafes. And so let's say you wanted to add one. So you can click the add button and it'll include it in your like places, and it'll add it to a day, and then you can go in there and you can change it to be, okay, well, we want it to be on this day's itinerary. So then it'll automatically add it to your itinerary based on the recommendations. And one of the cool features about the Explore thing, all the guides that they have, they are downloadable. So if you're gonna be somewhere and there's not going to be Wi-Fi, you can download the guide so that you can still find places if you don't have Wi-Fi or data. And I think that's super, super helpful. That would be really nice on a cruise, actually, because if you didn't have tons of time ahead of time to plan, and we all know that cruise ships have the most outrageous prices for Wi-Fi. So you could download some of these guides ahead of time and still plan your trip, even though you didn't have Wi-Fi, based on these guides. I thought that was a really neat feature just to kind of help people out, especially when you're traveling. You never know where there's going to be Wi-Fi. And as much as we want to think that there's Wi-Fi everywhere, it can be difficult sometimes. So very helpful. So like I mentioned, you can go ahead, you can click on things and it will automatically map you to whatever your location is, which I think is really helpful because then you don't have to type anything in. So I absolutely love that aspect. Then you can also look at the map overall and it'll show you where everything is in conjunction with each other. So kind of like that Google Maps thing, but it just shows you on your phone. So I like that because then you can see what's around each other. And then we were just going to be spending the morning in Toronto, so I thought I'd add that note to it. So I knew that that's where we were going to be primarily in the morning, and then we'd be traveling the rest of the day. And then all of the days just kind of like whoop, go up when you're not looking at them, which is helpful. You can also customize your dashboard of your trip. You can change the background photo, which is nice. You can kind of pick something that you feel like represents your trip. You can add your flights, and you can add your rental car information. You can add your hotel information. And it's actually kind of nice because you can just forward your confirmation emails to the email on there, and it'll actually pull up your reservation. So that way you don't have to be digging through your emails to find everything. It'll have your confirmation email already picked out. So I actually did that and it worked really well. So that was really, really helpful because I did not want to be looking through everything. This is back on the home page, and from here you can kind of see different guides of different destinations. You can look at booking hotels. You can look at deals and promotions, which is helpful. And then you can look at your profile, which can show you the trips that you're planning. So we took a trip to San Diego, so you can go back and reference where did you go, which is super awesome. You can also create your own travel guide. So if you're like, okay, this is what I would recommend to somebody, you could send it to somebody after you created it for them. That is Wanderlog, and I think it's a great app for tracking things while you're on your trip. There's so many different features. It is a little bit, I wouldn't say it's the most easy to learn right away, but once you get the hang of it, it's really, really helpful. So definitely check that out while you're on your trips. And the budget feature, again, is one of the biggest selling points for me. So anyways, those are all of my tips and tricks on how to plan your vacations or trips or any sort of travel that you have going on. Traveling can be really stressful, and when you plan ahead of time, you eliminate so much stress because you're prepared, you have everything where you need it, and you've already thought about things ahead of time, because there's a lot of things that you can't just wing. There's a lot of things you actually have to plan ahead of time, or you're not going to be able to have the best experience. And so these are all the things that I do. This is kind of like my step-by-step formula for planning a trip. So hopefully you found it helpful. You were able to find some things that would be helpful for you in planning your spring break or any other trips that you have coming up this year. Let me know down below what travel hacks or tips that you have, because I am constantly looking for ways to get better at traveling. And with us having a baby, I feel like it's gonna get so much harder. So anything that you guys have that you can share with me will be very much appreciated. If you like this video, go ahead, click down below to like it. And if you enjoy planning and organization content, then go ahead and subscribe down below, because I do post videos frequently. Thanks for joining me today, you guys. I hope you have a great spring. And if you're going on a fun spring break trip, enjoy yourself, and we'll see you all soon.